The Old Helicopter and the Sea. Written and read by TARDIS 9. Based on the railway series by the Reverend Wilbert Awdry and Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends by Britt Allcroft and David Mitten. While Percy was away being mended, Denise was brought in to help with the work on the branch line. She was apprehensive at first, since it meant being away from Diesel, but she decided not to dwell on this fact and carried on with her work. "It's only for a few days," she told herself. "I'll be back with him soon enough." The other engines were impressed by her strong work ethic, and even more so when they learned more about her bravery against 7102 and the tankers. She soon met Terence and Bertie too, and was most amused when she heard about how they had met Thomas. Predictably, Thomas wasn't too keen on being reminded about running into a snowdrift and being rescued by Terence, but was outnumbered in his attempts to hide the story from her. But Denise was curious about one other resident on the branch line. "Every time I pass Knapford Airfield, I see this funny-looking object," she told the other engines in the shed one night. "What object?" asked Thomas. "A large white thing that looks like a bar of soap on stilts," replied Denise. "It's got great arms sticking out of it." Toby laughed. "That's not a bar of soap," he explained. "That's Harold. He's a helicopter, you know. He doesn't usually fly much these days. He's getting old, you see. But he used to perform quite a few rescues on the line." "Like when Percy had to struggle through that flood, or when Daisy got stuck in the snow," Thomas added. Yes, and don't forget your little runaway train, Thomas," Daisy retorted indignantly from the carriage sheds. Thomas blushed and wisely remained silent. But Denise was in awe as she heard about Harold's adventures. She decided to talk to him about it tomorrow next time she passed the airfield. The next morning, Denise was taking Percy's usual train of stone trucks to the harbour. She left them on the quay to be unloaded and scuttled over to the airfield where Harold the helicopter was dozing in the sunlight. "Hello," she tooted cheerfully. Harold opened a sleepy eye. What?" He yawned. Then he saw Denise. "Oh, hello there, old darling. Who are you?" "I'm Denise," she replied. "I'm Harold," he said. "What brings you here? I've never seen you before." Denise told him about Percy's accident. "I see. Fell down a mine like Thomas did, has he? A good chap, Percy, but rather a one for sticking his wheels in it, if you see what I mean." "Yes," grinned Denise, "I do. But the other engines have told me some amazing things about you. Did you really stop Thomas when he was a runaway?" "Oh, yes, I did," Harold replied eagerly, "though I must give the inspector some credit for his work, too." And the two of them went on talking about all the things they had done. Harold felt honoured that the young Diesel held him in such high regard, and was very interested when she told him about her own adventures on the railway. "My word!" he exclaimed. "Very top hole of Sir Topham to send that beastly 7102 away. What a bally villain she was, eh, what?" "You're telling me," Denise groaned. But then she stopped. "Harold," she asked, "the other engines tell me you can't fly anymore, but you look to me like you're in very good shape. Why is that?" Harold sighed. "It's because of my engine, you see," he explained. "It's just been overhauled, but the mechanics in its contacts with my arms are such these days that I only fly on special occasions. It's a shame, really. I miss using my nice arms, especially in an emergency. Why, back in the day I could hover like a bird." "You never know," Denise said. "You may still get to fly again one day." "Oh, I doubt it. Not with my old arms," Harold said sadly. "But thanks all the same, old darling." Denise felt sorry for Harold. She said goodbye to him and returned to her work at the harbour as the weather changed for the worst. She picked up her empty stone trucks and took them back to the quarry. After that, she picked up a load of hay and delivered it to Farmer McColl. By this point, wind and rain buffeted her, but she struggled on. She could barely see where she was going. Her headlights shining brightly and her sanding gears working perfectly, she fetched a train of loaded trucks from the lead mines and took it to the harbour. She had just shunted her trucks into position for James's slow goods when she heard a commotion coming from the harbour master's office. "What's all the noise about?" she asked. "I'll go and ask," said the driver. He and the harbour master returned with bad news. "I've just received an SOS call," said the harbour master. "Two boatmen have been forced to abandon ship when their speedboat capsized. Served them right for going out in bad weather, if you ask me. But now they're stranded at the cliff base near Ballyswain. There's no way anyone can reach them, and the nearest helicopter isn't around for miles." Denise thought for a moment. "Are you sure?" she asked. "What about Harold?" "Harold?" goggled the driver. "Are you sure, Denise?" "Yes, I am," she protested. "This is an emergency, and he is the only helicopter available who is nearby." The harbour master spoke to the airfield controller. "It's irregular," she said, "but we must help the boatmen." Harold's pilot ran towards him. "Come on, Harold, old man," he said. "You'll never guess what. There's an emergency." His co-pilot ran up, harnesses in hand. "Let's go," he said as he loaded them onto Harold. The pilot explained everything to him. "Whiz-zo," said Harold. Suddenly, he forgot about everything else. He didn't even notice when his engine started up without any problems, or that his arms seemed to ache as he took off into the sky once more. "Well, old chap," he thought to himself, "if this is your last rescue mission, so be it." Eventually, he found the boatmen under the cliffs near Ballyswain. There was no way anyone could reach there by road or foot. The sea churned up great waves that came too close to them. The boatmen clung to each other tightly, watching the growing tide with fear and dread when Harold called out to them. "We're lowering some harnesses to you. Attach them to yourself. Quickly, please." With relief in their hearts, they did so. As gently as he could, Harold lifted them off the ground. The wind blew strongly against him, gently pushing him towards the cliffs. But he never gave in. At last, the boatmen were high enough to be taken clear of the area, and Harold's co-pilot slowly pulled them inside him, one at a time. Harold flew them back to the airfield. He touched down to see a small crowd had gathered around him, while Thomas and Denise stood by the airfield watching him land. As his arms stopped moving and the boatmen disembarked, there was a loud explosion of cheers, whistles, and horns. "Well done, Harold!" applauded the airfield controller. "Perhaps, when we've repaired your arms, we should put you back into service as a rescue helicopter after all." That would be nice. In fact, absolutely first rate," Harold beamed. "You see," smiled Denise. "I told you you'd be back flying the skies again someday." "How right you were," Harold said. "Thank you for everything, old darling." A few days later, Percy came back from the works, and Denise returned to Vicarstown. She smiled as she passed the airfield. It was empty. She then heard a buzzing noise and looked up to see Harold flying overhead. The look he gave her was more than enough for her. Harold was back in his proper place in the sky. "I hear you're off home to Vicarstown," he called. "Oh yes," replied Denise, "but I hope to come back soon someday. I'd love to see you again." "Oh, I'm sure you will, old darling," he said. "I'll be all over the island again now." "I look forward to seeing you then," Denise said, "but I must be off. I've missed Diesel and the yards will need a good sort out. Goodbye." And with that, she honked her horn and slowly rumbled away. "Farewell, Denise," Harold called out, "and well done. Cheers, and keep up the good work."